and welcome to our fall DLS discussion. And I'm really pleased to be introducing our speaker, Lindsay O'Neill. Lindsay is a faculty member at California State University in their Graduate Instructional Design and Technology program. But she also works with libraries. She consults and trains faculty and libraries on effective pedagogy and instructional design and educational technology and many, many things. And you may recognize her from speaking at ALA just this past summer. So welcome, Lindsay. And after this, we're going to have a discussion, a short discussion in breakout rooms where you're free to use the mic or use the chat to discuss with the DLS community. And then further than that, we're going to continue the chat if anybody would like on our DLS Slack channel, which the link to join that is in the invite link for this discussion. So once again, thank you very much for coming, and I'm going to go ahead and let Lindsay present for you all now.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. I had some microphone issues setting up, so thanks. Hi, this is Lindsay. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes or so, and it's going to be kind of an optimistic talk about my own OER journey and the direction I would like to see libraries go. So if you're interested in my slides, they're on my website, lindsay-o'neill.com. That's also where I blog a lot about instructional design and e-learning if that interests you. So a little about me. I spent 4 years as the instructional design librarian at California State University, Fullerton. It's in Southern California. It's a large regional university. And as of the beginning of this year, I started teaching full-time for the instructional design and technology program we have on campus. It's actually a fully online program, so I've had quite the education in teaching online as well. I was teaching part-time for them a couple years before I went full-time. So I have a lot of open education experience, not only campus level at Cal State Fullerton, but also program level and library level. Campus level, there is a campus and a system initiative for the whole Cal State system to go more affordable and open with educational materials, and I was involved in the campus implementation at Cal State Fullerton. As a librarian liaison, I worked with the instructional design program to transform that program to be completely affordable, partly open, but completely affordable otherwise. And as a faculty member in that program, I've also redesigned several classes to be fully affordable. And what I'm going to talk mostly about today is at my at the library level. When I was the instructional design librarian, I did a lot of work, kind of like micro level within the library itself, to work with my colleagues on open education and what it could mean for them and for other librarians. So today I'm just going to talk about why I'm committed to OER, which will include a little bit about my own OER journey as a librarian chiefly, and if you have any questions about my experience as a faculty, I'm happy to chat about that as well. And I'll conclude with just some simple strategies to foster an open ethos, beyond just open education, but how you can go more open in general and why it matters. All right, so before I get chatting, I'd like to hear about your own experience with open. I don't plan on going over the basics of open. I assume if you're here, you know the basics of open education. So I'd like to hear about what your experience is. Maybe you're already an expert and you want to chat. Maybe you're new to it. Just please share in the chat. Or use your microphone if you like to jump in. Hi, Alex. Thanks for coming. Yeah, your experience with Designs for Learning was pretty neat. Elena, you're already using OER. That's fantastic. A few new people. There's always, yes, Luann, I agree. There's always something new to learn. Right, Mike. Yeah, I also do a lot of advocating for OER with teaching faculty, especially in online courses. It's a natural fit. Oh, OER for engineering. Ooh, I'd be interested to hear if anyone has any experience finding OER for engineering. That's a tricky, specialized field to find open materials, I would think. And instructional design is actually pretty difficult to find open materials as well. Anything more specialized or at a graduate level seems to be more difficult to find open education. All right, give another moment to share your thoughts and I'll move on. It's always worth, Luann, taking a look at some place like Merlot, or OERcommons.org is another one on engineering. Looking for OER is always pretty much the biggest challenge. If there is something out there, it's like finding a diamond in the rough. Huge challenge. Huge challenge. Yeah, aeronautics, yeah, that'd be tough to find OER for as well. Hey, Becca, thanks for being a Merlot peer reviewer. That's pretty cool. That's great. You'll have a lot of experience and you can share with all of us. Okay, so I'll go ahead and move on. So I'll go ahead and just talk a little bit about why I'm committed to OER and what kind of open education to me has always been kind of a huge concept to wrap your mind around, especially when you want to teach other people about it, to make OER yourself, to reuse OER. There can be a lot of moving parts to it. So I'm just going to talk about my chiefly library experience with OER, and maybe that can be a nice springboard to talk about strategies for OER. All right, so story time. So again, I was the instructional design librarian at Pollock Library at Cal State Fullerton for several years, and that job was my first librarian job. I'd worked in libraries a bit before that, but as staff, not as a librarian. So I got to Cal State Fullerton, and I was also the first ever instructional design librarian. It was a brand new position. I was a brand new librarian, and I was at this huge university. It's now up to 40,000 students, I think. Only 15 instruction librarians. They do hundreds of one-shots and kind of an underserved online population. So this is kind of the setting that I was at trying to figure stuff out. And when I got there, the first thing I wanted to find out was, what's already online. There wasn't much of an onboarding process. I was trying to figure out who everybody was. I knew there was a lot of teaching, but I didn't know really what things people used in teaching. So I went looking for online instructional resources, and this is pretty much what I found. This is a silly joke picture, but basically there's a lot of LibGuides when I got there, and there was a YouTube channel, but the newest videos on the YouTube channel were 5 years old, and it was really difficult for me as a new person to figure out kind of what the standard was, what was available, would people want to have a place where we could share items. I needed media hosting. It was a tricky situation for me. So again, I was a brand new librarian in a brand new position. I was planning one-shots from scratch. I started at the library in August, so right at the beginning of the semester, and you know how you're thrown right into it, and fall always seemed to be busier than spring. I wanted to get media hosting. Other librarians needed media hosting. We had so many students. I thought that if we had more online materials, maybe we could scale up instruction a little bit. And I was also really trying to get a sense of the lay of the land, who was who, how people taught, what expectations were. I knew I was going to have to do a yearly file. I wasn't sure how to prove the effectiveness of my teaching. It was a big problem, and one of the ways I describe instructional design is instructional design is all about finding a solution to an instructional problem. And for me, there's more than just an instructional problem. There's a lot to figure out. Now, what I found as a librarian and working with librarians are pretty much always happy to share their work, their knowledge, their time. But the challenge is always knowing who to ask and what to ask for. Again, as a new librarian, I was figuring out who was who. I didn't know how people taught. Sometimes librarians don't like it when you come to observe their classes. I didn't know what to ask for. I didn't know if people were using handouts in their classes or people preparing PowerPoints. I wasn't really sure what the expectations were. And I've also found, as a professional, that new content often duplicates existing content. You make a handout that someone's already made, for example, at a library level. It'd be nice to know if these things existed, but there was no way for me to find out what existed without asking each person pretty much individually. Now, I would say that it is the ethos of librarianship, I think, to be sharing. Librarians as a whole care a lot about education, about their profession, about other librarians. And where I wanted to go with this was I realized I was looking for kind of more of a culture shift. Librarians are already very sharing. If you ask them for help, they will help you. But what I was really looking for in my own library in particular as a new librarian was, let's see, this will advance, a shift from reactive sharing to proactive sharing. Again, people are happy to share, but you have to know who and what to ask for. And it would be great if I didn't have to ask, if there was some place I could look to find what was already available within my library itself or in the library profession as a whole. So this is where I kind of started getting involved in open education. There wasn't someone at the library at that time when I started that was involved in open education. There was a campus level initiative that was ramping up that I ended up getting involved with the head of the Faculty Development Center, the head of online learning and training. So at a campus level, I started learning a lot about open education. And I do think this is a really big thing to wrap your mind around. There's so much to it, not least among them copyright. So what I learned was, in general, you own the copyright to your work. That means that generally you have the right to put a Creative Commons license on your work. At my campus, there was an intellectual property policy where it's kind of like, I still own copyright to my work, but the university could also use my work. So I realized all of us at the library had the right to add Creative Commons licenses to our work. We don't have to ask for permission, we can just do it. So if you're not familiar with Creative Commons, it's kind of a scale of open. This is the other fuzzy thing that you find about open education is that truly open is a Creative Commons BY license or a Creative Commons 0 license, where all you have to do is, for a BY license, is give credit to the person that created an item. But Creative Commons licenses get less and less open the more you go down. Now, as a professional sharing my work, I usually go for a BY license or maybe a share-alike license, sometimes a non-commercial license. And as I learned more about open education, I thought this is a great opportunity to work with my colleagues at the library to teach them more about open education because, again, we had this campus initiative, and they were going to have to teach their own faculty about open education. And this could be a double dip thing. Not only do I teach them about open education, we can do a practice what we preach thing and start sharing materials ourselves within the library. So what I ended up doing is I ended up building a local WordPress-based learning object repository just for Pollock Library. It's not very scalable because it's a little bit clunky to add items to this. But over several years, again, I was going for more of a culture shift, I realized. I started building a collection of local learning objects at Pollock Library. I added my own materials, put a Creative Commons license on my work, and uploaded it. I asked my colleagues for things. Again, they were not keen to volunteer. A lot of people are shy about their work because they feel like, oh, it's not polished, it only works for me. But I think it's a huge benefit to other people just to see what it is that you're doing in the class. So as people, as I found some of the interesting materials my colleagues had, I asked them if I could have it and add it to the repository and put a Creative Commons license on it. So through this way, I was kind of doing a little bit of, librarian professional development on open education, on the different kinds of Creative Commons licenses, and on, I was really promoting this open ethos within the library itself. Now, after several years, I left the library, but when I left, we had a collection of a few dozen objects in the repository, and I did achieve a little bit of a culture shift in that people were starting to volunteer their materials to go into the repository, and that was fantastic when people are willing to share their stuff. So again, the goal was, as I mentioned in the beginning, I had all these challenges. I was a new librarian. There wasn't a place to find existing materials. We needed media hosting, a place to put online tutorials. Maybe we could scale up. So I made a lot of progress towards solving some of these challenges for the library, at least, having some solutions that would partially solve these challenges. I put, the result was successful-ish. Again, I'm really happy with how that project turned out. If you want to learn more about that repository project, I've done past presentations on that. And probably the best result was when I was wrapping up my work at the library to transition out into just teaching full-time. And what I learned finally was I never knew throughout this repository project who was using the repository. I could count stats from visitors, but I didn't really know who those visitors were, if they're local, if they're from someplace else. But as I was leaving, I learned that we had 2 brand new librarians, and they were early career librarians. I think they'd worked in reference at other places, but they were doing instruction for the first time in our library. And I learned that they were using the heck out of that repository. They're going through materials, they were using stuff, and that was, to me, that was hugely, hugely important, and that's pretty much a big success for me, that there was a place that new librarians could look to. They didn't have to struggle quite as much as I did, because there's still not much of an onboarding process at that library. It's a lot of just kind of figure it out for yourself, so I feel really good that I made a couple of people's lives less difficult starting at the library. Okay, so that was basically my OER journey. I remain really committed to open education. I still am involved in teaching it, doing training on it, and in developing open materials myself, and also developing open classes. I'm currently exploring a lot of open pedagogy, a lot of interesting stuff. There's a lot to explore in this field. So I'll move on to talk about some strategies for us as a profession in librarianship to foster more of an open ethos. So I'd like to pause for a moment and ask, what kinds of things do you and the people at your library make? If you would just maybe type in the chat box. Is there someone at your library that's made custom software for your institution, or people making instructional materials? What other kinds of things do you see people making at your library for local use? Oh, Douglas, you make most of the instructional materials at your library. It sounds like you might be a solo instruction librarian then? Ooh, that's a lot. Beth makes libguides, videos, hyperdocs. I don't know what a hyperdoc is. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about that. Yep, lots of libguides, a lot of recordings. Right, a lot of people want to use materials branded by other institutions. Yeah, that's a lot of time what's available as open or free. LibGuides times 100,000, yep. Lots of handouts, Google presentations, live links, lots of supplemental instruction. Right, yeah, a lot of APA materials and FAA guides. That sounds like it's definitely a local need. All right, so yeah, I made a short list of things that I know of that people make. Yeah, a lot of learning objects. Sounds like we all have a lot of instruction-oriented librarians in here. A lot of custom software and systems. At Pollock Library, at Cal State Fullerton, there was a custom library instruction scheduling software. I know some people come up with room scheduling software, employee handbooks, student assistant handbooks. Maybe people make job handbooks and maybe a cataloging workflow. There's a lot of local stuff that is created, and often it's not proactively shared because people think, well, this is really only specific to our institution, or maybe they're not comfortable sharing their work. Now, of course, I would encourage you to share your work. I think there's a lot of benefits to sharing the things you make, just from learning what other people are doing, what's even possible, and being able to avoid duplicating work by reusing something that someone else already made, maybe in whole or in part. I would encourage you as a specific strategy to make your own internal repository for your institution, maybe a Dropbox, a Google Drive, a LibGuide. There's easy places to be able to share work. You could just make a Word document that has a list of all the items that are available someplace. Project Cora is great for sharing assignments and lesson plans across the profession. If you haven't checked that out, it's pretty cool. If you are publishing articles or book chapters, you can share preprints and postprints at Open Science Foundation. Again, this is kind of a practice what we preach. I think as librarians, I think we're really into sharing and being involved in open education. And we don't always make our own work open. And I'm as guilty as anybody. I had a need to get published quickly, so I didn't always make my work published in an open access journal, but I do try to share preprints and postprints, for example. And this presentation, too, I put a Creative Commons license on it should anyone ever wish to reuse it. Now, the first 3 bullet points are all kind of proactive things where you're either making an internal repository or going someplace else to share your work. But a smaller thing you can do that would still have a really big impact is just to, by default, put a Creative Commons license in the footers of your work. So, for example, in my LibGuides that I was making at my institution, I made a default box where I just put into the footer that this is licensed under Creative Commons. Anyone can reuse it. No one has to ask me. I'll put the Creative Commons license into my presentations automatically, again, just like this one, or into any handouts that I make. I put into the PowerPoint notes. And what this does is that even if I'm not going to a repository to put my presentation, like this presentation is kind of a one-off. I'm not going to put this into a repository somewhere. I do have it on my website, though. But if any of you download it, because it has that Creative Commons license on it, you know exactly how you can reuse it, and you know that you can share it with others. And I think that's pretty significant, especially within a library itself. A lot of the times you are able to get materials from maybe a colleague, either a presentation or a handout, and they're happy to give it to you, but then you're not really sure if you can reuse it. You're not sure if you can share it with somebody else. So again, you have to go back and ask, can I reuse it? Can I share it with somebody else? So as the creator of the content, if you're just putting a Creative Commons license on it from the very moment of creation, then whoever has it knows exactly what they can do with it. You're saving time, you're facilitating sharing, and you're also helping your colleagues in your library and across profession avoid duplicating so much content. So that's really the direction I would like to see librarianship go, is more of again, a proactive, we're happy to share, so let's be proactive about sharing. So that's actually it from me. I know we're going to go to breakout rooms in a second. Are there any thoughts, questions, suggestions for me or for others on OER? Again, you're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to use your microphones. Chat box is fine too. Oh, Melina's asking to show us how you put Creative Commons license on your work. I'm not able to share my screen that quickly, but if you go to Google and you search for Creative Commons License Chooser, it actually has a really nifty little walkthrough where you choose which ways you're willing to share your work, and at the end of that it gives you the appropriate license and the little picture of the license that goes with it. And I just basically copy and paste that into my PowerPoints. I put the text into the PowerPoint notes, and if I'm using a Word document, I'll just copy and paste the picture and the little text that goes with it into the footer of the Word document. It's really easy. So Stephanie asked if I can talk about how to share work that is a remix of OER works. Well, the first thing, and sometimes the most challenging thing, is figuring out if you're reusing the work appropriately. What gets really tricky is usually the share alike clause in a Creative Commons license. If you have something with the share alike license, that means that you need to put the exact same license on the resulting work that was on the original. Sometimes people put a no derivative clause into their Creative Commons license, which means that, yeah, you can reuse my work, but you can't make any derivatives. So that means that if it's a PDF that's 10 pages long, you can't trim it down to just 1 or 2 pages. You have to keep it exactly as it is. So that can be really difficult to remix. So it really does depend on the license. I would say that the definite thing you need to do for any work that you reuse is you need to cite it appropriately, and there's 4 components to doing an appropriate citation for an OER work. You need to cite the creator. If you just have their username, that's fine. You need to cite the title of the work. You need to cite the license that was assigned to the original work, and you need to have a link back to the original source. I'm not sure if I have that written down anywhere. I think I've done presentations about this before. But again, you need to have the creator, the title of the work, the license of the original work, and a link back to the original work. And even if I'm using public domain things, I still make sure to link back to the original work so that people that reuse my work know that it is public domain and they can reuse it. Luann's asking, for those with active repositories, what do you use? Things go outdated quickly. We don't know where something lives to fix it. I don't know how many folks have active repositories. I made my repository with WordPress, so really it's like a kind of a blog platform, and I had a server space attached to it where I could drop files into the server space. Yeah, it's nice to have a centralized place. Does anyone else have any experience with this? ePress, right. There's some major ones, some major open source repositories, but they take a lot of setting up. Drupal and Canvas Commons. Yeah, if you have Canvas, there's a really cool open feature called the Commons in Canvas, an internal network, right? Yeah, my campus used to have SharePoint, but they did away with it in favor of Dropbox. We have Google Drive, though. Moodle. Yeah, we use Moodle for teaching at my campus. You could have a single course in Moodle where you try to store stuff, and each module could be a different topic or section, and then everyone could have editing access, but that's a whole other thing. Omeka, I don't have any experience with Omeka. Does anybody else? I heard it's a great platform. I mean, any repository you choose would be able to at least link to your files, even if you had to store them someplace else, like Dropbox or Google Drive. And then I think it depends on your server usually how it's configured to handle traffic. My repository at the library is always kind of a small time repository, but if you're getting a lot of traffic, I have no idea. OER Commons is a what's it called? A referatory. I don't know if you can upload materials directly to OER Commons. Everything I've seen on there links outward to someplace else. But again, if you had something in Dropbox or Google Drive, you could link to it. Yes, you can. Great. Okay. Yeah, I've not used it to actually upload anything. I've had a couple things uploaded into Merlot, but I love OER Commons' interface. Yeah, there's a lot of authoring tools in OER Commons. Again, I haven't used them very much. So it looks like this part of our conversation is wrapping up, and Anjali has used Omeka. Oh, okay, it's more for displaying collections. Yeah, I've heard it used more in museums, I think, but it's an option. It's something to try out for sure. All right, so it looks like that is it for me. Thank you all so much for coming to this talk, and I think now that that's done, we'll go ahead and move into breakout rooms. I'll go ahead and mute myself now.
Lindsay, thank you so much. I took like a million notes and I have a bunch of questions. I'll probably follow up with email or something. But
Sure,
thank you so much
chat.
for coming and sharing and speaking. Like she said, we're going to be breaking up into breakout rooms where we have some questions and discussion topics to talk about. And correct me if I'm wrong, Anjali, but I believe we're coming back at 2:50. And you'll transport us
Yeah,
back?
I'm in the process of trying to get everybody into a breakout room right now.
Yeah, great. And so shortly, in just a minute or two, you will be magically teleported into a breakout room where we will continue the discussion. And after coming back, if you have any questions, you can always ask them on Slack or send us an email or get in touch some way.
So if everyone can just hang tight with me for about a minute, I should be able to I've started to put some folks already into breakout rooms. I should be able, I'm sorry, my mouse is doing something really weird. Okay. But I should be able to get everybody in a breakout room fairly soon. I will do this as quickly as I can. Lindsay, would you like to be in a breakout room?
Sure, yeah, include me.
A lot about I think some of the things people were more interested in were some of the tools and ways we can create and share these OERs, and um, the encouragement to share is really great, but a lot of times it's a matter of not knowing what's out there. So beyond this discussion, we're continuing the discussion on Slack, but we also post the recording of this on on our ACRL recordings website, and we'll send out a copy of these materials with a survey that goes out afterwards.
Thanks everybody for coming. And Lindsay, thanks so much.